Let me tell you something that most people won't. When you chase someone who doesn't want to be caught, you slowly begin to lose pieces of yourself. You chip away at your confidence, your value, your sense of identity, and the worst part, you don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Now, I know society has painted this picture, especially for men, that chasing a woman is romantic, that persistence means you care, that if you just try harder, if you just show her how much she means to you, eventually she'll see your worth. But here's the truth. When you have to convince someone to love you, it's no longer love. It's a transaction. And you're selling yourself short. When you chase a woman who's clearly not interested, what you're actually doing is teaching yourself that your value is conditional, that it's based on how much attention you give, how many calls you make, how many sacrifices you can pile up just to earn a moment of her time. And that mindset is incredibly dangerous because instead of living from a place of self-worth, you begin to operate from a place of lack. You begin to think, if only I was richer, better looking, more successful, then maybe she'd like me. And before you know it, your self-talk becomes filled with doubt, insecurity, and this silent desperation that follows you everywhere you go. That kind of energy doesn't attract love, it repels it. Think about it. When you know who you are, when you carry yourself with confidence and clarity, you don't need to run after anyone. People come to you. You become a magnet, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're comfortable in your own skin. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who isn't desperate for attention, who doesn't need validation to feel whole. Let me be real with you. When a man constantly chases, he starts becoming invisible. Not because he's not valuable, but because he's handing over his power. Every time you ignore the signs, every time you justify disrespect or disinterest just to stay in her life, you're saying, I'm not enough unless you approve of me. And that's not confidence. That's not masculinity. That's a slow erosion of your inner strength. There's a big difference between showing interest and chasing. Showing interest is healthy, it's expressive, it's mature, and it gives space for connection. But chasing is one-sided. It ignores reality in favor of fantasy, and too often it leaves you heartbroken, confused, and questioning your own value. What I'm trying to say is this: you are not defined by how hard you can chase. You're defined by how deeply you know your worth and how boldly you walk away from anything that doesn't honor it. So stop chasing women, start chasing purpose, growth, and peace. Because when you elevate yourself, when you put your energy into becoming the best version of you, the right people, women included, will notice. And they won't need to be chased. They'll come, and they'll stay, because they'll see something most people miss. A man who knows who he is and refuses to settle for anything less than mutual respect and real love. That's power, and that's where you belong. You know, one of the things we often overlook when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to men chasing women, is how easily the power dynamic shifts. And it's not always obvious at first. It starts subtly. You send a message, she leaves you on read. You double text, and she takes hours or days to respond. You rearrange your schedule, make time, go out of your way, but she barely acknowledges the effort. Before you even realize what's happening, you've placed her on a pedestal, and you've placed yourself far beneath it. And that's what I want to talk about, the imbalance that comes from chasing. Because here's the truth. When you're doing all the chasing, you're no longer seen as an equal. You've unknowingly handed over all your power, and the relationship, if it ever becomes one, is now built on shaky, uneven ground. That's not love. That's submission disguised as effort. A lot of men think that by chasing a woman, they're proving their devotion, their seriousness, or their ability to be a good partner. But let me ask you this. Do you want to be with someone who only acknowledges your worth after you've bent over backwards to prove it? Or do you want to be with someone who sees your worth from the beginning and matches your energy with the same intention and respect? The moment you start over-investing in someone who's under-investing in you, the dynamic becomes unhealthy. And the longer you stay in that space, the more it becomes your norm. You begin to tolerate disrespect in the name of being patient. You begin to make excuses for the lack of interest, telling yourself she's just busy or not ready yet, while ignoring the fact that if someone wants you in their life, they make room for you, period. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with showing someone you're interested. But interest should be mutual. Attention should be reciprocated. Respect should be a two-way street. If it feels like you're always the one initiating, always the one calling, planning, apologizing, chasing, oh, that's a sign, a big one. And it's not telling you to try harder, it's telling you to stop. When you give up your power in a relationship, you're not just hurting your confidence, you're also creating a dynamic where your needs come second or sometimes don't matter at all. And trust me, the woman on the receiving end can feel it. She may not say it out loud, but deep down, she knows you've placed her above you. And once that happens, it's incredibly hard to reverse. Real connections are built on balance, on mutual respect, on equal effort, not one person doing the chasing and the other enjoying the attention without giving anything back. So if you find yourself always doing the most, stop. Take a step back. Ask yourself, am I being respected here? Am I being seen? Because if the answer is no, then it's time to shift your energy. It's time to reclaim your power. You deserve a connection where you're not just an option, but a priority, where you're not chasing love, but sharing it. That starts with knowing your worth and never handing it over just to be noticed. Because when you stand in your value, the right person will not only see it, they'll meet you at your level without needing to be chased. Let's be honest. There's a very fine line between showing someone you're interested and coming off as desperate. And unfortunately, a lot of men cross that line without even realizing it. But let me tell you something clearly and without apology. Desperation is unattractive. When you chase a woman with this sense of urgency, like your life depends on her saying yes, or noticing you, or validating your worth, you're not coming from a place of strength. You're coming from a place of lack. And women can feel that. They can sense it in your words, in your body language, in the way you try too hard to impress or please. And instead of drawing her closer, it actually pushes her away. You see, when a man is truly confident, when he's rooted in purpose, clear on who he is, he doesn't need to perform. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his value. He simply is. He walks into a room and doesn't have to chase attention because his presence commands it. That's the kind of man women are drawn to, not because he's loud or flashy, but because he's grounded. He's content in his own skin. But when you're constantly seeking validation, when every interaction with her feels like a test you're trying to pass, it begins to feel inauthentic. You laugh too quickly at her jokes. You agree with everything she says, even if it goes against what you believe. You rearrange your whole life to fit into hers, even when she hasn't shown the same willingness. That's not romantic. That's not admirable. That's desperation, and it's repelling the very connection you're hoping to build. And I say this with love. You don't need to do all of that. You don't need to prove yourself to someone who doesn't even recognize what you bring to the table. Because when you chase with that desperate energy, what you're really saying is, I don't believe I'm enough on my own, so let me prove it to you. And that mindset is not only exhausting, it's also unattractive. Women want to feel desired, yes. They want to be pursued, yes, but they also want to feel like the man who's showing interest has options, has standards, and most importantly, has boundaries. If you don't value yourself, how can you expect her to value you? Confidence isn't loud, it's not overbearing, it doesn't beg or plead. Confidence is quiet, steady, and calm. It says, I like you, I'm interested, but I don't need you to complete me. That kind of energy is magnetic. It invites curiosity, it builds respect, and more often than not, it creates space for real connection to happen naturally, without force. So if you find yourself chasing someone who keeps you guessing, who plays hot and cold, or who makes you feel like you're never quite enough, pause, pull back. Not out of spite, not as a manipulation tactic, but as an act of self-respect. Because the truth is, you don't need to chase what's aligned with you. The right woman will meet you halfway. She'll recognize your value without needing to be convinced. So stop moving from desperation and start standing in your power. That's where attraction truly begins. One of the most dangerous things about constantly chasing women is how silently it pulls you away from your purpose. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because this is bigger than relationships. This is about your life, your direction, your legacy. When a man makes the pursuit of women his main focus, something starts to shift. He begins to neglect the very things that once made him stand out. His dreams take a backseat. His discipline weakens. His time and energy, instead of being invested into growth and building, get poured into impressing someone who may not even value what he's offering. And that's a tragedy. I've seen so many men with massive potential slowly lose their edge, not because they're not talented, not because they lack ambition, but because they've become distracted, consumed by the idea that their worth is tied to how many women they can attract or how hard they can try to win someone over. And I say this from a place of love. You were not created just to chase people. You were created to lead, to build, to rise. A man who is purpose-driven radiates a completely different kind of energy. He doesn't have to beg for attention because his focus, his direction, his clarity, those things naturally draw others in. When you're locked in on your goals, when you're committed to your own growth, that's when you become truly magnetic. That's when the right kind of woman notices, because women are drawn to men who have something greater driving them. But when all your mental space is taken up with wondering why she hasn't called back, why she's distant, what you need to do next to win her over, you begin to drift. You stop showing up fully for yourself. You start living in reaction to her instead of living in alignment with your own vision. And the worst part, that version of you, the one that's off track, uncertain, desperate for her approval, that's not the man she fell for in the first place, if she ever did at all. There's something deeply attractive about a man who has direction, a man who says, this is where I'm going, and I'd love for you to come along, but I'm going either way. That kind of man doesn't need to chase because he knows that the right woman will see his journey and want to be a part of it, not be the center of it. When you stay true to your purpose, everything else begins to align. You walk differently, you talk with more conviction, you make better decisions, not from fear of losing someone, but from love for your future. And when a woman sees that kind of focus in a man, she knows she's dealing with someone who values himself enough not to get lost in the noise. So if you've found yourself running after someone who barely sees you, take that as a sign, not that you're not good enough, but that your energy is being misplaced. Redirect it, reclaim it, put it back into your mission, your vision, your growth. Because the moment you stop chasing distractions and start chasing purpose, that's when everything changes. That's when you become the man you were always meant to be. And trust me, that man never has to chase anyone. Let's talk about something most people won't say out loud. Quality women are not drawn to men who chase them. They're drawn to men who lead, men who have presence, men who stand tall in their values and don't shrink themselves just to be liked. That's the difference. And if you don't understand this, you'll spend your life running after women who were never looking to be caught in the first place. High-value women, women who are emotionally mature, self-aware, and confident, aren't looking for a man who bends over backward just to get their attention. They're not impressed by how fast you reply to a text or how often you flatter them. What impresses them is how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, how you move through the world with integrity. That's what gets their attention. Now, here's what usually happens when a man starts chasing. He thinks he's being romantic. He thinks he's showing commitment. But what she sees is someone who's willing to abandon his standards just to be accepted. And deep down, that doesn't build respect, it erodes it. Because a woman wants to feel like she's entering a relationship with someone she can admire, not someone she can control or manipulate with breadcrumbs of affection. A leader doesn't chase, a leader inspires. He walks his path with purpose, and the right people naturally want to walk alongside him. He doesn't constantly adjust his pace to match someone who's walking away from him. And that's the energy you need to carry. Not arrogance, not coldness, but quiet confidence, the kind that says, I'd love to build with you, but I will never beg for your attention. I will never lower my value to earn your love. There's a reason why women test boundaries, especially in the early stages. It's not to be manipulative, it's to see where you stand. Do you fold under pressure? Do you compromise who you are for a smile or a compliment? Do you become someone else just to please? And when the answer is yes, she may enjoy the power for a moment, but the attraction fades quickly, because deep down, she can't trust a man who doesn't trust himself. Real connection, especially with a high-quality woman, is built on mutual respect. She's looking to see if you're solid, if you're secure, if you know how to say no. And yes, that includes walking away when you're not being valued. It's not about being harsh, it's about being honest. And honesty is attractive. So stop trying to win her over by proving how much you can do for her. Start showing her who you are by how you lead yourself. The right woman doesn't want someone who follows her around like a shadow. She wants someone who shines his own light and invites her into that space. She wants to feel safe, yes, but she also wants to feel inspired. You don't need to chase her to keep her. If she's the right one, she'll walk with you, not ahead of you, not behind you, but beside you. That's what real partnership looks like. And it only starts when you stop proving and start leading. Here's what I want you to really understand. Real love doesn't require chasing. It doesn't demand that you exhaust yourself trying to earn someone's time, attention, or affection. When love is real, it flows. It doesn't feel like a constant uphill battle. You don't have to keep proving your worth every day just to be noticed. Somewhere along the way, we've been conditioned to believe that love is supposed to be hard, that if you're not struggling, sacrificing, and fighting for someone's attention, then it must not be real. But that's not love. That's insecurity in disguise. That's fear trying to convince you that you're not enough unless you're doing the absolute most. But the truth is, the kind of love that lasts, the kind of love that builds you up and gives you peace, it doesn't require you to chase. It meets you halfway. It's mutual. It's intentional. And if you have to constantly chase someone just to keep them in your life, then they're not choosing you. They're tolerating you. And that's a painful place to live. You deserve more than someone who gives you mixed signals, more than someone who only responds when it's convenient. You deserve someone who is just as excited to call you as you are to call them. Someone who sees your value not after you've chased them for weeks or months, but from the moment they get to know who you really are. That's what love is. It's not something that has to be hunted down. It's something that finds you when you're aligned, when you're authentic, and when you're grounded in who you are. And here's the thing, when you stop chasing, you start attracting, you begin to operate from a place of self-respect instead of desperation. You walk differently, you communicate with clarity, you no longer settle for someone half interested in you because you know the cost of staying in situations that make you question your worth. You see, when you're grounded in your identity, you stop entertaining confusion. You no longer cling to someone just because they're beautiful or charming. You start to ask deeper questions. Does she respect me? Is she consistent? Do I feel safe being myself with her? And if the answers are no, you learn to let go, not out of bitterness, but out of maturity. Love should never feel like a performance. You shouldn't have to keep wearing a mask or guessing whether you're wanted. And if someone makes you feel like you're too much or not enough all at the same time, that's not love. That's emotional instability. Walk away. Because the love that's meant for you will bring peace, not anxiety. It will support your growth, not distract you from it. It will feel like home, not a competition. No, don't chase women. Don't chase anyone. Chase purpose. Chase peace. Chase becoming the best version of yourself. And when you do, the right woman, one who respects, values, and chooses you, will come. Not because you begged for her attention, but because she sees what's undeniable. A man who knows who he is, what he wants, and what he will no longer settle for. That's the energy that changes everything. That's the love worth waiting for, and you never have to chase it.